I preach pair programming through the whole organization. As developers, you are like tech, tech, tech. And then like you're like, oh, but soft skills. No, soft skills later. And then you're getting to the senior role where you're like, okay, soft skills a little bit. You need some soft skills. Do you want to be a manager? You did it great with that one person. Will you do it with 7? And you're like, I mean, how hard can it be?
Hi, I'm Maria, and this is the Agile State of Mind. Welcome, and welcome to my Agile Leadership series, where I try to deconstruct the role of engineering manager. And for that, I interview engineering leaders on their role and their path from a developer to a leader. You can find this episode both on YouTube and a podcast. That's a new thing for me. Check the links in the description. And talking about podcast, today I have with me Luis Castro, who apart from being a full stack developer and a tech lead, is also a co-host of a podcast. Hey Luis, I'm thrilled to have you with me.
Hello.
Before I introduce you, I need to ask, did you see Top Gun already?
I have not, but I did watch the original this weekend because I was like, no, if I need to go to see the Maverick one, I need to remember how good the first one is. And I was like, oh, there's like a lot of inconsistencies on the first one, but I'm gonna let that one pass.
And I'm asking about it because I remember that, in my taxi, the team was called Mavericks. I understand that was the tribute. What's about the name that you put the name on your team?
I think it was mostly because we wanted to follow some rules, but we wanted to break some of the other rules. And that's the whole character of Tom Cruise, right? The Maverick is like there to follow the military rules, but at the same time give it a little bit of a twist to make some new moves that nobody has ever done. That's kind of it.
Be dangerous, right?
In a healthy way, in an or, I think. But yes.
Yeah, I remember there was some controversy about the name. So Luis is a full stack developer and a tech lead at Cameo, a service that brings celebrities closer to their fans by offering personalized experience. So you basically can buy a personalized short video where a star of your choosing, like Chuck Norris or David Hasselhoff,
Yeah.
can record a personalized video for you. Recently, I actually saw a collaboration of Philo, where I work, with Cameo, which made me, yeah, and you see that we are still interconnected.
We are.
Because we know each other for years now. We both worked at My Taxi, that then became Free Now, for almost 2 years. And you joined as front-end chapter lead, and I would like to talk about that experience. And apart from that, you collaborate also on a project called Sol. And I'm super excited about it, actually. I don't know how much you can actually disclose, but it's super exciting. And you, as I've said, you are a co-host of a podcast, No Es Solo Código. It is in Spanish. It's pretty addictive, I have to say. The other day I started listening and I couldn't stop. It's interesting because in English it means not only code. Yes. And I would love to stop here for a moment and let you explain the name. Can it be that coding is not only about code?
That is true. So there are like 2 things that we wanted to tackle when we did the podcast. There is a lack of people sharing their experiences through the whole journey of being a web developer or just a developer in general. We always feel like, okay, so if you go into YouTube, you go into whatever media and search for tips on how to become a better person being a developer, you will only find how to make better React something, how to do whatever with Node.js. And you're like, yeah, that's cool, but like I don't want to learn the tech side always. So we wanted to share like our experiences through what is the management journey, what is your team journey, and how do you feel as an individual in a team, how to collaborate, and all of those soft skills that people are like, oh, this is not important yet, but it will be important later in your like future life. And you're like, no, it's important now. So that's basically what we wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm so glad you say this because I also work with a lot of tech leads and with a lot of developers. And that's one of the things that I keep on finding. Like, I recently heard that people feel frustrated that they are asked to facilitate the daily, let's say.
Hmm.
So, what do you think? Like, have you found this in your work life?
I think yes and no.
Mhm.
Depends on the organization and how outgoing people are in the org. In Cameo, I'm to be honest, everyone's like really outgoing. So everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm the one doing it today. So that's like a fresh air on different things that we have experienced in the past. But I have seen other organizations where people are more like, I'm a developer, my duties are only to be a developer, so I don't have to deal with this and someone else will deal with it. And I feel like that's not the point. If you don't become a real full stack developer, you're only going to like a really tiny part of the whole organization schema and business model.
So what does it mean for you to be a full stack developer? You said it right now, and I
Yeah.
think what I understand as a full stack is a bit different. It's like the developer that can do backend and they can do also front end, but then they can do whatever you ask them to do. So what do you understand as a full stack?
Yeah, to me, a full stack developer is a true product developer. So, someone that can understand what our design needs, what are the business model needs, and what are the product needs, and how to deliver fast from the back end to the front end. So, like, it can manage all the tools in the tool set, and that also includes tools that are for product owners, tools that are for designers, etc. So you can make decisions and judgment calls on things that aren't your area of expertise, but that you're still not like, you still have knowledge on that area.
You say that the developers at Career are pretty outgoing, so I understand that's the culture that you have. But imagine like you are in a culture that's not so ongoing and so extrovert, and you come with this idea. I think people might be a bit taken aback. Like, I came here to code. How would you deal with this kind of approach?
A tough cookie for sure. What I will do, so this is a culture thing, right? So it's not like one team can fix everything for the other teams. This has to come from the upper side in theory, but it also involves designers, it involves product owners, it involves data science, and everyone has to just be a little bit more open every single day to hear the solutions from other people's, or just the questions that they have. And everyone has to be a little bit more open to make those questions. So it's all about creating a safe environment to ask and to answer without any repercussions. And I think that's like the first step. So it's like baby steps, right? And then how do you make that an evolution on the company culture? It's a windy road. It's not like a, I can give you a solution right now on how to do it, and these are all the steps. You have to see it because it involves a lot of people, and every organization is different.
Yeah, I agree. And I see that a lot, and especially now that I have been working with different cultures. We started together and
Yeah.
it was mostly people from Spain, but wouldn't even say we had a lot of people from Latin America. It was very mixed culture. But I think that when we started in Free Now, there was this idea of what the culture should look like. There we actually lived the values. We knew what are the values of the company, and
Hmm.
then I passed through different cultures. So I worked with for a Portuguese company. Now I worked a lot with Israel and Armenia and the Americans, and I see like the difference in the cultures and how hard it is when you have a lot of people, because when you have like dispersed people, like few people from different countries, in the end you people like come together because nobody has like the groups are not so clear. And right now I see that we have like group here and a group there, and you can see how hard it might be to to make it all work and have like a consistent approach, because I see like totally different approaches in different places. And I would like to come back a little bit, make a few steps back. So when you started as a chapter lead back at Free Now, what would you say was the expectation that was set to you as a, about the culture and how we want to do things, and then how
Hmm.
you build a team from scratch? I remember I was helping you a little bit on that.
Basically, but
Yeah.
yes.
And how you manage to make sure that what is expected and the culture of the company was already, just for context, the company was born in Germany, so the company has been there for a few years already, and then there was this tech hub in Barcelona. It was a bit of like, okay, how do we want to make sure that we keep the culture my taxi had by that time?
Yeah. So, expectations wise, to answer your first point, the only expectations that were given to me were we need a team of people that are responsible and can actually do the things that we don't know that we are going to need, because we are not 100% sure how this will evolve. That was like an interesting thing, because you're like, okay, so if we don't know where we're going, we don't know the specifics of things that we need. So you need people that are more generalist than actual specialists. So that was like my first point. I was like, okay, maybe more general people. And the second expectation that we had was we need to grow to a certain point where we can support multiple teams. And I was like, okay, so at that point, what multiple teams means for me, because this was like a different point of view, was we're going to build multiple products that are independent from each other. So we need people that have seniority range where you can say at least one senior developer per team and at least one junior developer per team. And then the ones in the middle should be basically in the middle range. So like one or two that are in the middle range so that everyone can be a healthy support to each other.
Interesting, because it means that you kind of set the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
And I remember we did that a lot there. We didn't micromanage. It wasn't like micromanaging. It was like, okay, those are the rules. And then we need to, within the rules, let people self-organize and let the managers do their work as they please. Is
Mm-hmm.
that so? So that was the expectation. And then how, because you had to recruit all those people, when you started the recruitment, how did you make sure that those people actually fit into those criteria?
So for me, one of the things that I enjoy from my interview at Freenow was that I got to meet a lot of engineering people at first. And I thought this is like a really interesting thing because you actually get to know a lot of people that you might work with. It gives you perspective on, do I like these people enough to work at this company? And do they like me enough to have me at their company? So I wanted to continue with that one. And we had at least one senior developer and one junior or mid developer in the interview. So it was like three of us doing the engineering interview, even though we did not ask questions to the candidate, like us three, like maybe just one of us asked the questions. I think it was important because it also gave the candidate a little bit of opportunity to talk to a wide range of people. And it also gave us the opportunity to say, would you like to work with this person? Knowing the questions that they asked and the way that they responded or asked for help during the exercise. Because at the end of the day, that's like our goal, or like my goal in general, is to have people that I know most of the people that will interview for a senior developer job have all the tools. They know how to do things. Like I don't need to like be nitpicky with that. What I try to be nitpicky with is, do they express themselves well? Do they talk about their solution before they actually start doing it or during the process? And how well do they communicate that with the person on the other side?
Ah, that's amazing. I remember that it also struck me as something incredible that we could meet the team before we started working, and the team actually could vote afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's okay or not okay for them to have this person as their team member. And it felt so agile and and so like self-organized, empowering for the team. In the end, you give the power to people to vet somebody and say like, no, I don't want. And then you of course have to explain and vote again. It was a really nice process. But what you said, I think, is very interesting, that you want people to first share the solution before they jump into doing it. Why do you think that's so important?
So it's a combination of a couple things. One, it gives you time to think about what is the approach that you want to actually take. And the second thing is, for me at least, how do I make sure this code will not have bugs? Because in the end, code will probably have bugs, but how can I make sure it is the least amount of bugs possible? And that also gives me a little bit of an edge where I can say, if I did not cover this edge scenarios, how can I cover them later too? So it's more about like abstracting yourself from the tasks and then just thinking first instead of just jumping in hot into something.
Yeah, that's interesting. But is it only just thinking, or is it more like sharing with others and checking with others what they think, and like having this collaborative mind, the sum of different minds put into an exercise? And I would like to understand first if that's this, and then how do you do that? Like, because I can imagine it can take forever. Like, okay, I have a solution, and now I have to find the time to share it with somebody, but then it will take forever to develop. So, practically, how would that work?
Yeah. So at an interview, I mean, the exercises are fairly concise and small. So it's a couple minutes to like do the whole process. In a real world scenario, it really depends on the story that you're doing. But for me, mostly this is not a process that you do for small stories. This is a process that you do for things that are like 3 pointers or more. And from there, there's like a couple, I think, gotchas, which is one, do you want to make a tech spec for this? And a tech spec is a document that you're like putting your approaches. You have maybe multiple approaches that you may take, or you can use different technologies to solve the issue. So you're just putting all this thought process in there. And then you're just making a recommendation based on the things that you saw. So that gives enough time for the people reading it to say, well, I might not go through all your approaches, just go and jump straight to the solution that you say is the best solution. And if I don't agree completely with that solution, I will then go to your approaches and see why you disregarded the things that I might be like more inclined to go with. And if that's the case, then I'm like, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe it's like this makes sense. You put a lot of thought into this, or maybe you didn't catch this. So that's like like your 5 8 pointer type of solution. So what is your 3 pointer, right? Your 3 pointer for me is jump into a pair programming exercise with someone if you have doubts about what will be the best approach. I'm like, I preach pair programming through the whole organization, and people at Cameo will tell you that. I'm pretty sure Free Now will also give you the same.
Yeah, I remember. I think there was quite a lot of pair programming in Free Now, and I struggle to preach. Like I preach, but I don't see people listening. But tell me more about this tech specs. I actually listened to one episode where you talk about this with Alexis. I link everything in the description, so you can go and listen to Luis podcast if you know Spanish. If you don't, you can also just listen for fun of listening to Spanish, Venezuelan Spanish, actually, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we
Because
speak very fast. So there's a difference there.
yeah, there is, I tell you. I'm used to like Spanish from Spain. So it took me a while to get to. I was so surprised that you can actually speak that fast. It was so surprising, especially Alexis.
Oh yeah, Alexis speaks really fast.
But yeah, please tell me more about the tech specs, because I think it's very important to have like living documentation and plan. It's kind of like planning before actually doing. I think we underestimate a lot this part. First of all, how do you do that? Like, where do you put the tech specs? Where is it stored? And how do you make sure somebody takes a look at it? Do you have like
Yeah.
peer review of tech specs?
So at Cameo, we have a process where we put everything in Notion. So yeah, fairly cool.
Wow,
Notion,
yeah.
you get to a point where Notion, it's actually quite slow because you have so many databases and stuff. So we actually had to request a couple things, but it's fun. It's fun.
Okay.
So we have this big database with all the tech specs from every single team, and there's like a review process. So you have it like in a draft status or a work in progress or in review and approved or rejected. So the main thing is you cannot build a tech spec unless it's like a very technological thing, like very go into deep with like something that is tech wise, without a product spec. And product build their specs first. They have all the information of things that they want to have, how they want, like what do they want to accomplish with this, and what is their talk with the design team about solutions that are potentially good for the outcomes that they want to reach. So from there we go in and we're like, okay, so if you want to reach into this with that, this will be the things that we need to modify or create or make to like actually accomplish that. And we go through like a milestone process where we say this is the minimum viable thing we can do to meet certain expectations from your product spec, and this is like our milestone one. And it might not be as refined as you want it to be, or it might not be like a one-to-one match to what the designers wants, but we then go through like what's our milestone two, which is more of a more refined thing. Maybe this will go into a larger pool of people to A B test and that type of thing. And then milestone three is more of a like, we had success and people are actually using this. So let's actually refine this and make it good. So that's like our philosophy on how to approach the tech spec. So you could think you make the tech side of things thinking on this. So there's like a few breakdowns. And then we do have now a review process where you share. So there's like a meeting every single week where people share their tech specs live in a Zoom meeting with a bunch of other stakeholders or developers, just to like see, is there anything with this approach that maybe the people at my team did not catch while reviewing this, or maybe there are some suggestions on things. Usually the comments at that meeting are like non-blocking comments. Maybe one day we'll have something blocking. I think that is the whole purpose of this meeting. Just have the space to say, hey, this thing might actually not do what you want because of this. But we haven't had that yet.
Wow, it seems like quite a robust process to do this. I would like to understand, because you said at the beginning that this full stack part is like being a little bit in each of the area. So when you talk about the milestone process, how do you make sure that PMs are aligned and UXs are aligned? How do like all the parties come together? Because I didn't understand that part. How do you get to, okay, we will do this?
So we are a very remote first company. So it's a very async process where designers make comments in the document, product owners make comments in the document. At the end of the day, with milestone one, you are trying to reach all the goals that the product owner sets. So their involvement there is more like of like, well, if you think we can do 80% or 90% of the things, I'm good with it. The more important part is the designers, because it's usually there where you're like,
It
this
doesn't look like
yeah,
I
this
wanted
looks
it.
great, but we don't have any of these things. And if we want to do it in 2 weeks, there are some concessions that we need to make. And where are the concessions, basically? So then that's where you go with your product owner and say, when do we actually need to deliver this? Is this a 2-month type of project where we will release a huge thing for the users, or do we want to do it on batches and then just like test parts of it?
Okay, so I understand that everybody basically has access to this document, and
Yeah.
you do it collaboratively in Notion. Okay, that's interesting. So, and that's why you also have a lot of async communication and probably some rules for that. But I wonder, even though you can have a document and have a lot of comments and resolve them and have like good process for that, do you sometimes need a meeting? Like, okay, we almost know it, but there were so many comments and we just want to make sure that everybody agrees and like have a discussion.
So, I mean, we do have a section for like open questions that we try to resolve as soon as possible. And yeah, I mean, at the end, the process takes like a week. So we try to wrap up everything in like 4 days and then have one more day of nitpicking type of thing, sugar syntax and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, this is good, but like, I don't know, whatever. We'll continue with this. So yeah.
Okay. One question that pops to my mind now is metrics. Did you always have this process, or somehow, you have an evolution? It started with something and now it's this. Do you have any metrics to measure the increase on quality or increase on maybe even speed? Because knowing what you want to do, making sure you decrease this back and forth and ping pong later on in the process when it's more costly because half of the development has been already done and it's not what we expected. So, do
Mhm.
you have any metrics to back up what you're doing?
So we have always done a similar process. I think our metrics are not measured in the velocity, but more into what are the bugs that we encounter. And we have reduced the amount of bugs since we started with the
Mhm.
process in a more robust way because it has evolved in the past
Okay.
years.
And is that like getting better,
I mean,
or
it
do you
is getting
see?
better. We have a meeting every Friday where we dog food the product and we let people from the company try out new features and then just go through the whole flows. And then it's basically like QA, but with everyone in the company, everyone that wants to go to that meeting, which is usually a fairly amount of people. And we have noticed a decrease on different bugs from that. So that's a pretty good thing.
Yeah, that's great, because in the end, I think that's one of the best metrics to measure, apart from the customer being actually happy about what you deliver.
Yeah.
And not, part of it is also that what you deliver is not buggy.
Yeah, exactly.
Going back to the leadership part, I would like to understand, you spoke a little bit how you like set up the team and in my taxi, and now I see that you have quite a lot to say about what you're doing in the current one. Could you explain a little bit the difference and why? So first, the difference between you are a functional lead, front-end chapter lead, as we call
Hmm.
it, and now you're a tech lead. What's the difference?
Cool. I think the difference is just in the title. No, I'm kidding. So the difference it's how you reach the different parts in the company. So as a front end chapter lead, I think your reach it's only between what people see inside the front end and like some other technologies and a couple things here and there of how the product feels. So you can only go as far as product and designers, and then after that everything just like it is inside this cloud where you're like I can go in there and like say something and maybe someone will hear me and that type of thing, versus with a tech lead your major area of impact is inside your team. So it's not as horizontal as the front end chapter. And you can actually go to other teams and have the same area of impact. So that's like a big difference. And from there, how does that scale on the vertical side? I think it's a little bit less cloudy because there's more easiness to approach people in the product organization or in what will be the data like data science engineering organization, marketing level, and all these other parts of the organization where you're like, my name, you know that I am in this team, and let me help you.
Okay. I think maybe I don't understand what actually is the role. If you could explain, because as a chapter lead, you were people manager
Yeah.
for all front end developers across the tribe, let's say, so in different teams. And right now, are you also a people manager? What are like your day to day like
I think that
responsibilities?
is the keyword, a people manager. As a front end chapter, like you said, you are in the management track, but inside what will be the people side of things. With the tech lead, you are in the management side, but not on the people track. You are on the tech track. So what you're managing is expectations of results and not the people's growth per se.
Okay. So who do you report to, and like who's the people manager for your team?
I report to the director of engineering, and my people's manager is the director of engineering is actually my people's manager. But for my team, we have another figure, which is the team lead, and that person is the people's manager. And it's kind of an interesting position because when you go into one-on-ones where you discuss how can you improve at doing something or what is your progression through the tech stack, that's a point where the team lead needs me to be in that meeting because they're like, well, you know how they have done everything on the tech side.
Is the team lead a technical person or more like HR person?
In my team, it's a technical person, but in other teams, it might not be.
Okay. And it's a bit strange because you are in a team. There is a team lead that most of the people report to, but you.
Exactly. And if you think it as a Venn diagram, right? So my team is here and I'm inside the team, but I also have this chunk of responsibilities outside of my team. And that's the part where like you are in this team for most of the things, but you also have to jump and do other things.
Okay, so just to simplify things, a terrible way to simplify, but would it be like you were an architect? Like in the old days, we had architects, and this architect is actually in one of the teams. So you have more influence, you can mentor people on the solution and so on. Would that be relevant?
I think I don't like the architect word,
I know.
but in general, yes.
In my previous company, we had architects, and for me, it was like, what is an architect? Why would somebody design something for others and then they have to just implement it? And then, if you have any questions, this person becomes a huge bottleneck.
Yeah.
So I understand why you might not love the title. It's like Architects 3.0 or
It could be. It could be. I think we're trying to be a little bit more general on that area, but I also feel like nobody knows in any company how to like treat people that have reached this range yet. So we're all exploring it right now.
yeah, it's interesting because there's a totally different approach in every company. And part of the why of doing this podcast, video cast for me is understanding those differences and understanding different ways of approach to different roles. Because when I started, I didn't even recognize the difference between a team lead and tech lead because both, if you abbreviate, it's TL.
Yeah.
So then somebody tells me, yeah, I'm a tech lead in this team. And I'm like, oh, I never met you. How come I never met you? And then, because you're a tech lead and not a team lead. And I met only the team lead. One more interesting thing about this, what I find, apart from bringing people closer and like it's like reducing the waste in the end and fighting the bottlenecks, because I tell you, in my previous company the architects were a huge bottleneck, and I think it has been difficult both for the teams that had to deal with the solution they provide and then ask them and catch them to ask the questions they had, but also for the architects themselves. There was a huge pressure on them, like, you have to do this now and the whole team is blocked because you didn't do it. So really not a sustainable solution. So I really like the way you do it, like you go into the team and you work with the team. So I have different questions here. And first would be, so you don't manage people anymore? Did you decide, okay, now I am done with managing people, I prefer to be tech lead? Or do you miss the people part?
I think I'm an easy person to please on this end because I do like both sides of the coin, and I'm not in for more than the other one. So I'm like in the middle here. When the opportunity came for this, I was like, yeah, I might take it. Why not? So that was like my take on the whole thing. Do I miss managing people? I mean, I'm still managing people, even though it's not like really managing them. There's always going to be the human factor once you reach certain level of seniority. It's almost the same thing, even though you don't have it as one of your responsibilities in the notebook, right?
Is it a bit that it's actually less administration but you still have the contact, you still mentor people, you still have one-on-ones, probably like on request or maybe not.
So I don't do weekly. I do them when people request them, and they usually request them, I will say, like every 2 weeks or so. So maybe bi-weekly type of thing. And that's kind of my take on when do you want to talk versus me as a manager will be, hey, we should talk and at this cadence. So yeah, so the boundaries there are fairly different.
And that's a great position to be, I have to say. You know, when you learn coaching and mentoring, one of the first things people say is like, you should be requested. You shouldn't be the one that's like putting yourself on others and pushing, like, hey, we need to talk.
Yeah.
You need to want to talk to me, so let's talk.
I
So
agree.
yeah,
I
I
agree.
think it's a great place to be when people actually recognize the value you provide and they request to talk to you because they see the value, right?
I hope so. Or they just like
Oh,
me.
you're
I don't
so
know.
humble. I know we worked together, so I can imagine that they can see the value. And there was another question. Yeah, I also see sometimes that the people go into a people manager role just because it's the only way to progress in their career. Because there's a big difference, like when you have to manage people and coming
Huge.
from a developer, you know, that you can just focus on your stuff, even if it's only for 2 hours because there's a lot of meetings. You love the tech part, you love solving problems and like getting into like logical issues. And then suddenly you go and you are presented with the opportunity, you don't see any other way, and then you suddenly find yourself micromanaging people because you were not prepared to be a manager. And second, there's no time to code. You just have to go from one meeting to another and have a lot of like reporting or like administrative tasks that you never signed up for this. How do you see that? Have you ever experienced that?
Ooh, I think so. My first time being a manager, I did not experience that, but on the subsequent parts of it, I did. And I did see through my peers what it's like to be put into a position where you did not understand 100% what was the thing that they were going to ask from you. And I can totally see that. As developers, you are like tech, tech, tech. And then like you're like, oh, but soft skills. No, 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 soft skills later. And then you're getting to the senior role where you're like, okay, soft skills a little bit. You need some soft skills. And then you're like, try to do a little bit more of that. You get into the mentoring side of things. And once you get a little bit comfortable, then comes someone from HR and tells you, do you want to be a manager? You did it great with that one person. Will you do it with 7? And you're like, I mean, how hard can it be? And then you're like, whoa, this is a totally different animal. So, yes, I think we are in a war where we don't get asked enough to focus on soft skills. And we also don't have the opportunity to focus as much as we should. And that clearly reflects to a lot of the managers that are out there. If you ask people, why did you quit this job? Usually the answer is not because I hated the job, it's because I hated my manager. And that is the main thing here. Managers need to go through this whole process where they have to relearn everything they think they knew and then actually try to do a good job at it. So that takes time and no one is going to be patient with their manager.
Yeah, you should know, right? You were promoted to a manager. And in that cases, I think you need a lot of company support because that's what you just said. And I remember listening to one of your podcast episodes and you were talking about that. And I remember Alexis caught it and said, you see, you don't expect from the junior like wide range of skills because you think they are just a junior developer, they should just code now. And then you end up with this problem, right? Because as opposed to be, as you said, full stack, so open to different things that you need to do as a coder, I think sometimes we just put them in the box. I will be happy if you just code well.
Yeah. It's a tough position, and I think in our industry we see it a little bit more than other industries because we are a fairly outspoken side of the puzzle. But I'm pretty sure this happens at other types of organizations too.
Yeah, for sure. We need to rethink how we start. It's like when you rethink the approach to education at school. Now I see that a lot, that kids have projects and kids don't sit on their own anymore. You know, as an individual, you
Hmm.
learn to work in group, you learn to work in pairs and play together and self-organize, as opposed to like do only what the teacher tells you. And I think we should maybe try to do that. That's actually an interesting thing. I've never thought so much about it. Like when you start as a junior, you should give expectations that there's also this communication part that you need to learn, and this collaboration, and maybe how to document stuff a little bit, but wide range of things.
Yeah, it's like this a Steve Ballmer meme: developers, 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 and you're like, okay, but soft skills, something. Give me something.
Yeah, and then I would like to also understand one thing better, because I work with a lot of full stack developers, but how we understand it is, I think, different than what you explained. So,
Hmm.
okay, we have full stack because we can do everything. We can do
Yeah.
backend and we can do front end. Can you do both of them? Because now I realize that I just speak with so many full stack people, but maybe we understand different things.
So by definition, yes. So I do backend, front end, some database stuff, some infrastructure stuff. So you could say like, yeah, covering the whole full stackiness of the full stack. But I feel like that is a very narrow approach of things because you're like, well, you can dominate the tech, sure. But how do you actually bring value by being a full stack? And I think it gets to where do you understand the business logic that we're trying to accomplish and how can you make things better, faster? I kind of want to say one of the Cameo values here, but like, how can you make it memorable? And that's one of the values. And I think that is the important part where your expertise should not be only just in tech, because you also want to bring the best experience to your users. So maybe that be like, I don't know, we need to do this on the back end so we can actually make it better, or we need to do this on the front end so we actually make it faster or beautiful or more smooth or buttery. So that's the type of things that I try to bring into the table as a full stack, and I expect other full stacks to bring into the table.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you actually mentioned one of the values. You know them.
Yeah, I know. So I know two of them. There are three. The third one
Okay.
I always forget. I don't know why.
But you know, even 2/3 is better than nothing. So
Oh
I
yeah, two
think
out of
it's,
three. I'm pretty good.
yeah, yeah, good. That's great. And that also shows the culture you have in the organization. I feel like we are actually advertising for Cameo here.
Ooh, tough.
That was one of my questions, actually. You know, you have this developer that is considering whether I should become this manager that they ask me to, or I love development too much to do that. How much knowledge of product do you think there should be? Like, how do you approach that? You start in a new company, how do you get to know the product? Now it's probably pretty easy because you can actually use it, you
Yeah.
know, but not everybody has this, like, oh yeah, on my daily basis I can just click and start using it. Like we were doing the driver application, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going in your car with the driver application.
Exactly.
So how do you learn the product?
So my first thing will be to go to the people that actually have to deal with the product. That is the part of the organization that is always taken with like, oh, I don't know if I want to talk to them. I don't know if I want them to know my name. And that is customer support. Customer support knows everything about the product. They know all the quirks, they know all the things that people do with the product and when they have trouble with the product. So they can actually tell you how to use it, what is the effective thing that people do, what are the paths that people are like, I don't care, that I don't use that. They probably know sometimes more than people in the data science part, because the data science part, they're like measuring things to like gather this whole business holistic logic. And these other people are like, yeah, we have to deal with the people using it. So we know everything. So I would
That's
say reach out to them
yeah.
first.
Yeah, I recently found out that sometimes they might even know more than a QA, which
Oh, yeah.
you would imagine a PO or a QA knows the product inside out, but they know it from this technical design perspective, like what they would like the product to be, or what the product, like as a QA, oh, again the same bug, I told you already. And but nobody uses this part, as you said. So
Yeah.
I think the big value there is that they actually know how clients use it, because clients tell them what they like and what they don't. And that's just invaluable. Yeah, that's a very good tip. So, and I remember we did that in my taxi as well. I had to go to the customer service and talk to them about like what are the problems from like the typically the usage, not just
Yeah.
like what we would like the product to be. Yeah, very interesting. So what do you do? Like, have you ever been in like a company that it wasn't a norm and you had to like find your way to those people?
So I have been, and what I have done in the past is just like start asking questions, like who is the people leading this part of the organization, and then just go through them through Slack, like set up a one-on-one with them. Some people may frown up on you, and you're like, why do you have a meeting with this person? You're like, I just want to know the product. That's it.
That's awesome. And that's like very courageous, I would say, because you have to do something that's maybe not too comfortable, start asking questions about something that nobody asks questions, and find people that don't usually expect you to find them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it takes courage, I would say. Well, I think we covered quite a lot of things, interesting things. I really like how you work and the approach. I might steal some of the interesting tips. Is there anything like before we finish that you would like to add? Like a tip you would like to give to somebody who's just starting the journey to be a tech lead or people manager in tech?
As a people manager, I will say ask questions and don't be afraid of asking questions. And when I say that, it's like very cliche, right? Like, oh, ask questions to everyone. But no, like for real, ask people how they feel. Ask people what are their goals? What do they want to accomplish? How do they see themselves being successful? Not like, how do you see yourself in 5 years? And you're like, yeah, that's a very impossible question to ask. Like, I don't know.
What's your favorite color?
What is your favorite color? Yeah, going through the whole process of getting to know each other as you're the manager of these people will get you to a point where you feel a little bit closer. And it doesn't mean that you have to be friends, because you don't have to, and then probably you will not. But it's just building that meaningful connection within someone, and having that connection will bring you a little bit more closer to understand how can you make others successful, and having them being successful will make you successful. Like, you don't have to do anything for yourself, you have to do everything for the other people that you manage. And that's my only advice.
That's great. I happened to read an article that was recommended to me by my manager, Eric. Thank you, Eric, by the way. And it was about trust. It was talking about three elements of trust. One was like what you just say, meaningful relationships. Second was about like good judgment, so people actually look for your advice. And third was about consistency. But then they concluded that even though all of them are important to gain trust, if you don't have a relationship, the others will not matter as much. I find it like a great tip, and that you just came to it on your own, because it's like talking about leadership as a relationship as opposed to being a leader because that's my role.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a beautiful way to finish this conversation. We're so
It does.
smart.
It sounds very majestic.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was very interesting. I learned a lot. I hope we can talk again in the future about our different experiences that we have.
Whenever you want to have me in this screencast or podcast. Yeah.
Thanks. Great. And bye bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
And that will be all for today. If you have any questions to us, you can leave a comment on YouTube or reach out to us on Twitter. You can find Luis Castro on Twitter at CastroLem, L-E-M. I will add all relevant links from this episode in the description So check it out, and don't forget to subscribe and give a big thumbs up if you like the episode. And see you in the next episode, where I will keep on deconstructing the engineering manager role, and this time with Jan Hout, who is a full stack developer and a backend lead at Smart Patient, and he's also my brother. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye, everybody. Thank you.